All right, so today we're getting into a story that's, well, it's about a lot more than just football. It's about love, it's about results, and it's about a really bitter contradiction. We're going to dive into the fascinating and honestly super complicated paradox of Jose Mourinho at AS Roma.
Okay, I want you to picture this. It's January 16th, 2024. A car is pulling away from the Roma training ground, and inside, you've got Jose Mourinho, one of the most decorated managers in the history of the game, and he's literally in tears. So, what's happening outside? Are the fans furious, protesting? No. They're chanting his name, a full on chorus of devotion, even as he's being let go.
And that right there is the big question, isn't it? How on earth can a manager be so adored, so completely revered by the fans, the people who matter most, and still get fired? It just doesn't seem to add up. So, to figure this out, we've got to go back to the very beginning. So, let's talk about that promise. When Mourinho first showed up in Rome back in 2021, look, this was not just another guy taking over the team. No way. This was a massive statement of intent. It was a promise. And to really get why he was such a big deal, you have to understand Roma itself. I mean, we're talking about a huge club with a fan base that's, well, it's almost a religion. But for all that passion, they were absolutely starved for a major trophy. They'd been waiting and waiting for years, just for one big moment of glory in Europe. And then he walks in. Not just some random manager. We're talking about the special one. Jose Mourinho was seen as the guy, the ultimate serial winner. He had the personality, he had the tactical genius. He was the one person who could finally end that agonizing wait. He wasn't a hope, he was seen as a guarantee. And you know what? For one absolutely glorious, unforgettable moment, he did it. He delivered on that promise in the most spectacular way you can imagine. One, just one. But that single number represents Roma's first major European trophy in over 60 years. Think about that. Decades of waiting, of coming so close, of pure heartbreak. All of it just gone, wiped away in a single night. When Roma won that first ever Europa Conference League, the city of Rome didn't just celebrate, it completely erupted. I mean, this was so much more than a trophy. This was a deep emotional connection forged right there between the manager, the players, and the entire city. Mourinho basically became a Roman god overnight. But, and there's always a but, isn't there? Behind all this incredible joy, this triumph, something else was happening. A second, much more troubling reality was starting to bubble up to the surface. And this, right here, is where the paradox really kicks in. So you have these two totally different stories running at the same time. On one side, you've got Mourinho, the European hero, right? The guy who delivered a historic trophy. But then you flip the coin, and the story in their own league, totally different. The team's form was all over the place, it was frustrating, and frankly, a lot of people were saying it just wasn't good enough. And check out this number, because it's just staggering. 4. That's how many league games Mourinho's team won in their last 28 away matches. Just 4. It's a record that analysts called pitiful, and really it paints this clear picture of a team that just could not get it done, week in, week out, when they were on the road. So you're probably thinking, how did the fans just ignore numbers like that? Well, the answer really comes down to this idea of a cult of personality. Mourinho is a master at this. His charisma, his us against the world attitude, it created this unbelievably intense bond with the fans. And for them, the poor results almost didn't matter. The feeling he gave them was way more important than the actual points on the league table. But here's the thing. Emotion doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't guarantee a sustainable future for a football club. And the team's American owners, the Friedkin Group, well, they were looking at a very, very different reality. For the owners, this became a brutal choice. It was a classic head versus heart situation. Do you ride that incredible wave of emotion and fan love? Or do you make a cold, hard business decision based on performance and long-term financial stability? At the end of the day, they saw a club that wasn't getting into the super lucrative Champions League, and they decided they just couldn't afford to keep going down that path. Now look, a ton of fans were absolutely heartbroken, for sure. But it would be a huge mistake to think everyone felt that way. The fan base wasn't totally united. In fact, some were so angry at the owners, they were handing out leaflets that just said, Friedkin leave. So, firing Mourinho actually fractured the fan base. It created this huge split between people who trusted the owner's plan and those whose loyalty was and always would be with their manager. So, what does this all mean for Mourinho's legacy in Rome, the Eternal City? Well, as you can probably guess, it is anything but simple. We're basically left with two truths that just don't seem like they can exist at the same time. On one hand, he delivered that historic, unforgettable trophy, and he built a bond with the fans that most managers can only dream of. But at the exact same time, he was in charge of some objectively terrible league form. So for the fans, he was a massive emotional success. But for the business side of the club, he was a pragmatic failure. And that leaves us and you with this final, really crucial question. What defines success? What's actually more valuable to a club and its fans? Is it that one single moment of pure joy, a historic trophy you'll talk about for the rest of your life? Or is it the less exciting, but maybe more important, long-term stability and consistent performance? The story of Mourinho at Roma, it really doesn't give us an easy answer, does it?